Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today on Masechtas Ksuvas, Daf Ayin Gimel. We are going to begin on the bottom of Ayin Beis and Beis, second line from the bottom. So we were learning in our Mishnah that if a person is Mekadosh and Isha on condition that she has no Nidarim, and it turns out that she does have Nidarim, so then it's not a valid marriage because that was part of the condition. If he marries her Stam, which means he didn't actually specify, but it turns out she has Nadarim, so in that situation, it is a marriage. Teitze, however, she does not receive her ksuba. On this, the Gemara says, Itmar, Kitch Amna al Tanai. So the man made a condition, I will not marry this woman if there are Nadarim. However, Kansastam, when he actually married her, he didn't reiterate this condition. So the fact that he didn't say anything at the time of Nesuin, that this is something really bothering him, what is the din? So Rabbi get. Rab holds the fact that he didn't mention anything about the Nadarim again, so therefore the reality is it does have some element of Kedushin in Nesuin, and therefore he will need to actually give her a get. Shmuel says no, because it was all based on that original Tanai, B'shas Kedushin, even though he didn't say it now at the time of the Nesuin, it doesn't make any difference. The din still is, they're not Mikudeshes, and therefore no get is necessary. Omer Bias, we continue on Gimel Madalf. Lo Tema, don't tell me that time of the Rav, that the reason why Rav says that you still need to give her a get is kivan shekansastam, the fact that he married her and didn't mention anything about the Nadarim must be achuli achli latanai, that he basically changed his mind and says, you know what, even if she has Nadarim, I know I said this was a condition at the time of Kedushin, but I don't feel that way anymore. So I'm moichel if that is her situation. And therefore, because of that, a ksuva will need to be given if they get divorced. As Rashi says, uksuva boy lemesav la imigarsha. Rather, el time of the rab lefishein adamayitza bilas bilas nos. The fact that he has bia with her, he doesn't want that to be considered to be a biznos, and therefore, because of that, once he finds the darim upon her, so in that case, a get is given. However, Rashi says l'inin mamayna betanai koi. That condition remains. She'im yimsol leh nadarim teitze below ksuba. So this answers question 9 right off the bat. Kitchel tanavi kansastam rabbi misrichem enu get. Ma nafgemina. What's the difference? They have to get divorced. They're getting divorced anyway. Itam the rabbi mishum de ochel latanai or the ein adamaisim bilos bilos nos. As Rashi said, whether or not you have to give her a ksuba. So in this case, it's because ein adam oisa bilos bilos nos. And therefore, because of that, you still have to give, you divorce her without a ksuba. So the question is, this actually sounds a lot like something we saw before. Ditmar. We learned in Masechtas Yevamas. Katana, so you have this Katana, who is a Yesima, which means that her father is not in the picture, and her mother or brother, which is a din d'Rabbanan, had her get married, so she has the ability to do miyun, to walk away from this marriage. Now what happened to Shlomi Aina? She actually did not do mean when she was a katana, vihigdila, and then all of a sudden she gets older, and as she's already older now, then her husband has bia again with her. Says Rashi, v'akach mi'ayna v'amdav nises, and then afterwards she does mian. Says Rashi, vihigdila amdav nises, and she marries a second man. So what is the din? The fact that she got married now to a second man, was she really married to this first guy because she didn't do mian with him at the time as a katana? So the question is, and especially that he had been with her, so maybe that in itself creates them as they're married, and therefore the question is, what's the status about this second man? So Rabbi get misheni. You don't have to give her the second man who married her. It's not a marriage because she's really married to the first person. Say, well, the second person doesn't have to give a get. It says Rashi, gadla. That when she got older, he knows that Kedushin is nothing, and therefore, because of that, it's not necessary for him to give a get. Shmuel Emer Sricha get Misheni. Why? Says Rashi, Chol haboil al das kedushin harishonim boil. Maybe when he had bia, it was really based on the original bia, and the original bia was nothing, and therefore because of that, maybe the first they really are not married, because the bia, which is an act of kedushin when she's a gedola, is only when it was l'shem for that purpose. But since he already had bia with her before this age, so therefore maybe he just didn't have l'shem kedushin, and therefore she's really not married. So l'chayra, this whole notion sounds quite similar to this machlokes about that kadsha b'tanai becomes a stam. The iyat so the Gemara says not tzricha. You need both these cases. The iyat mar bahahi kamer Rav. Maybe only in this situation does Rav say this. Mishum deleika tana. There was no condition being made, as Rashi says, v'kol yoidim shein b'maseh katana klum. Everyone knows when it comes to this case of this katana that her actions mean nothing. The gomer uboil l'shem kedushin. It must be that he therefore had been with her when she was a gadol. It was Hashem kedushin, and that's the reason why the second person does not need to give a get, because their first, she's married to the first man. Because again, everyone knows that since everyone knows that mas in masedei klum, so he was certainly boil her when she was a gadol l'shem kedushin. So that's the reason why Rav says it's din over there. However, in this case in which there was a condition that was already said, even though it's true, and soon it was kansastam, but nonetheless there was a tanai, and since there was a condition and it wasn't fulfilled because she actually does have nadarim, so therefore maybe he will agree to Shmuel that you do not need to give her a get because they're not married. Maybe only in that case by nadarim does Shmuel say a get's not necessary, because after all the condition wasn't met. But in this situation, maybe he'll agree to Rav that in fact a get is necessary. So what happens that you married her stam and it turns out she has nadarim? So teitze shelo b'ksuba. So she leaves and she does not receive her ksuba, which where it says ksuba hu the little boy, hagit the boy. Now that l'chayra sounds a lot like Rav, because Rav says that because lefisha in adam oisa bilos nos, so therefore you don't get a ksuba, but you do have to give her a get. So my love, kitchom al tanai v'kansastam to the Shmuel, like we saw in this case, he was makanish her with a condition. I'll marry you on condition you do not have nadarim. It turns out she has nadarim, so the din is that kansastam still you have to give her a get. Shmuel says you don't. So l'chara, this case is a question on Shmuel. Mara says that's not necessarily a question because it doesn't say those words explicitly as we continue on Gimel Beis. Whoa, kitchastam v'kansastam. The only reason why it's necessary to give a get in that case, according to Shmuel, is because he didn't make any stipulation at any point of nadarim. It's just something which a person generally does not want. He doesn't want to marry a woman who has nadarim. But he never said it. He never said it by nesuah, he never said it by kedushin at all. So that's the reason why Shmuel will say only there is a get required. As Shmuel says, you don't need a get in this situation because at the time of the kedushin, he did make a condition. So 1 second. Now the Tani, so the fact that it mentions a Mekadesh says Ishal Manashi Ein Leha Nadarim, V'nim Solen Nadarim in a Mekadesh. So we said, what is the case where he flat out said, I do not want a girl with Nadarim, and it turns out she has Nadarim, it's nothing. So why do you mention that case? Tell a bigger Chiddush. Listening, Kansastam V'nim Solen Nadarim in a Mekadesh. Mention a case where she was kansastam, and it turned out to be the Nadarim that's Edom Kadesh of Koshkin Ha. Then certainly in this case, so Hachanami Kamer. This is actually how you read it. Now Mekadesh says the Ishal Manashi and Aleha Nadarim. If you have a situation, you made a neder that at the time of kedushin, I do not want her to have nadarim, kansastam, and then you have to add. And even though it's true that when they actually had nesuin, it was without that stipulation, because we're talking about a situation that Shmuel holds that in that case you don't need a get. Kitchastam and kansastam. However, if let's say he didn't actually say anything, Teitze shel b'ksuba. In that situation, Shmuel will agree that there's no ksuba. Ksuba to a boy, hagita boy. And therefore you still need a get. But again, only time Shmuel will agree that you need a get is where it was kansastam, it was kitchestam but kansastam. However, in the event that you were actually mekadosh al tanai, so then you don't need to get a kontra Shmuel. So ma'ishna ksuba the little boy. So what is the reason why she does not get a ksuba? Because he can say, I do not want to be married to a woman who makes vows. So he can get nami little boy, boy. So l'chayra, just like you don't have to give her a ksuba, so maybe you shouldn't have to give a get in that case as well by kitchestam and kansastam. So Marabba tzricha get midivrehem. You're right. Meikar adin, you shouldn't have to give her a get for that same reason why you don't have to give her a ksuba. But midrabanan, we still say that we want a get to be given. Rabbi gives a different reason. Why is a get given? So Tanas Svukim Asafkale. Do we assume that a man doesn't want a woman who makes nedarim? So that's a doubt. And therefore, Gabi Mamayna Lakula. When it comes to the din of money, we're going to go lenient. And Rashi says the since we are unsure, so we're going to keep the money in the hands of the man. And we're going to say she doesn't collect a ksuba. However, Gabi Yisur l'chumra, because we're dealing with a case of Isser, we're going to say, you want better that you give a get. Amar Rabba machlokis b'tois shtei noshim. The whole machlokis between Rav and Shmuel, whether a get is necessary, is when we're dealing with a mistake literally of two women. What does that mean? So Rashi says like this: Kiddush Leah al Tanai. So you married one girl, Leah, and you made a condition. You were very, very specific. I don't want to marry unless it's this, unless it's this, unless it's this. Then you married a different woman, and you didn't say a word to her. And it turns out the second woman has nedarim. Vainu te'usa. Rav Savar kivan deloy. That was the mistake. So Rav Savar kivan deloy asni bahada. Since he didn't make any condition with the second woman, even though we know it does bother him in general regarding the first, because he said it by the first girl, he didn't say anything by the second. Even though he revealed his mind, he doesn't want to be married to a woman who's nedarim, srichim and get. The second girl is still married to him, he still has to give her a get. Why? Why would it be anything? Maybe, very interesting, he really loved the second girl more than the first. So the first one, he made all these conditions, and he really maybe holds steadfast in those conditions. The second one, he didn't make any tanaim, didn't make any conditions, because maybe he says, I don't like a woman nedarim, but I kind of like the second girl very, very much. And therefore, for that reason, you would actually have to give a get to the second one. Shmuel Omer kivan degali daiti gali. According to Shmuel, he said no. Even in that situation, since the second girl, even though you didn't say anything to her, but by the first one, why did you make a whole big deal and make all these conditions? It must be really bothers you by anyone. And therefore, that's why Shmuel says you do not need to give a get to the second one. So the whole machlokas between Rav and Shmuel, whether you have to give a get to the second girl, is by shtei nashim. Avol b'tais isha achas. If it's a situation of one, which, as we're saying, is a case of kitchal tanai b'kansastam, divrei hakol ein tzricha menu get. Even Rav will agree that his condition is on, his mindset is on the previous condition, and therefore he does not need to give a get. What do you mean? Our whole Mishnah was talking about one woman, and we're asking all these questions on it. So, but the truth is, you're saying the whole machlokas is by two women. By one, no one argues. Eliyatmar, Hachiyatmar. This is actually how to read it. Rabbi machlokas b'tais ishachas ke'ein shtei nashim. The whole machlokas is if there is one woman, but it's like there's two women, because you changed your tune. Originally, says Rashi, kitchal tanai. So Rashi says it clearly like this: you married her on a condition, v'girsha, mina erison, and then you divorced her, v'chazer v'kansastam, and then you married her without saying anything. So the first time you got married to her, you divorced her, and you made all these conditions. And now you're divorced, when you got remarried, you didn't say anything. Says Rashi, Bahiyom or Rav Sricha get. In that situation, Rav says you need to give her get. She's like a second woman. L'shem kedushin boil. So it's possible that in that situation, the fact that you remarried her, it's like a second girl, like the case of the second woman, in which you didn't make any conditions with. You didn't make any conditions with this first woman either. There's one woman, so you have to give her a get. Shmuel sabar hagoli loy daiti mi kar the im he did runis I avshiba yaltanai kachaz v'kidsha. So no, the fact is that he made those conditions on this woman the first time. Now that they're divorced, now he's getting remarried. Even if he didn't say anything, it's clear that it's bothering him regarding this one woman. And therefore, Shmuel says it's not necessary to have to give a get. So this is how you read it. In that case. Like our Mishnah, get. In that situation, you do not have to give a get because we go buster your original words. Let's say a person made a mistake. They got married and it was some form of a mistake. Rashi says, has to do with vows. And you didn't want her to be married, or pachas misheva pruta. Let's say you ended up giving her for kedushin less than a sheva pruta, which of course we know you have to give her at least a sheva pruta, or else it's not a kedushin. V'chein katan shekidesh, also a katan who does kedushin, in which his kedushin is nothing, says Rashi, in kedusha of klum, the labar kichahu, he's not able to acquire something, and kiyikach ishiksiv, it has to be a kiyikach. Afal pishashal siv loinois leachmikain. So the Gemara in kedushin says even if he sends absorbent, expensive gifts afterwards, so it's certainly more than a shava pruta, or let's say when he's a gadol, but maybe he was saimich on the original kedushin. Enim kedushes, as we say, shemach was kedushin rishonim, because it goes back on the original kedushin. The original kedushin was not a good kedushin. So even though he ended up giving a lot of money afterwards, that was not done l'shem kedushin. Shalach, and was sent v'im balu kanu, that if they actually had bia afterwards, so the din is that will also serve as a kinyan. Now, Rav Shimon Yehuda Mishmar Yishmol Aimer Imbo Lo Kanu. He actually argues. Here's a mistake by one woman. My love tais nadarim. So we see that even by the case of Isha Achatz, it's a machlokas whether or not it works. When it's not that everyone agrees that when it comes to Isha Achas that you don't need to give a get. We see over here that it's a machlokas even by the case of Tais Nadarim. The says, no, that's not the mistake. Well, Tais B'Pachas M'Shever Pruta is referring to you made a mistake and you end up giving her less than a Shever Pruta. So that's a great answer. The only problem is that's exactly what we said in the second case. Pachas M'Shever Pruta, Behedi Kataniwa, Kidsha B'Tais, Upachas M'Shever Pruta. It already says that. So it can't be that Kidsha B'Tais is the same thing. So why would it say the same thing twice? And my answer is, it's really Perushika Mafarish. Actually, it's just coming to explain what that first statement was. The Kidsha B'Tais, Ketzad, what is the case that you made a mistake? So in that situation, but my commitment, what's the machlokas? Whether or not the bia afterwards works. Because one says that everyone knows that it's not a valid kedushin, that original one was nothing. So the fact that he had bia with her afterwards, and therefore that's the reason why the fact that he had bia with her, that it will be mekadeshes. The one says, not necessarily, not everyone knows all these laws. Kedushin Tyson B'Pachas M'Shever Pruta. He doesn't know that, and therefore V'chika Boil Adaita the Kitcher Rishonim Boil, and therefore his das was on the original action, and therefore for that that's the reason why it wasn't a kedushin then. So it's not a good kedushin at this point. At this point either. Okay. So let's look at question 10 very quickly before we continue with the next A's today. Kitchastam v'kansastam v'nimsal and nedarim. Sricha menu get ve'en lo ksuba. So ma'ishna get miksuba. Why is it not necessary? Why, if you don't need to give a get, you shouldn't have to give a. If you don't need to give a ksuba, you shouldn't need to give a get either. So we said you're right. You really shouldn't have to give a get midiraisa, midavarei, midarabanan. You do. Alternatively, what it's coming to tell you is that because it's a suffix. When it comes to dinim mamanis, which is the ksuba, we don't require to give the maman because of motzim mechav raya. However, when it comes to dinim asurim, we're not so sure if it was a kedusha, and then from a suffix we require you to give a get. Esvei hareini boalech. So a person says, "I will be boil, have relations with you." Almanash yirtze abba, on condition that father wants to be shelo ratza av. Your father doesn't want to be kadeshus. So in these situations, it is a good kedushin. Now, Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon, Rotza Av Mekadeshes, Rotza Av Ein Mekadeshes. Because you made the condition if the father's acquiesces to this form of a kinyan, so it's all totally on his point of view. Now, Bahacha, some people remove the word Chi, Tois Isha, Achas Dami Uplegi. This is a case of one woman, and there's a potential Tois involved, and they argue. What does that mean? On condition that your father is silent about it. And he was silent, and therefore, because of that, you're married. It's all totally that he has to actually say yes. The fact that he didn't say yes, it's not good. So what is the concept of silence? Does silent mean yes, or silent mean no? Or silent means that you agree. Is it shtika koda, or you actually have to admit to say yes? Eisvei moedim chachamim Rabbi Lezer. So the chachamim agree, as Rashi says. This is a Mishnah in Masechtas Yevamos. Hamigaris is isha. If you divorced a woman, dechzira, and then you remarried her, umeis, and then the man dies, muteres liyavam. So in that situation, she's mutter to the yavam. So even though she was married and then she got divorced, but she remarried, and now the man dies, so she will still marry. She can still still does yibum. So the Gemara continues and says like this: but katana, if we're dealing with a katana, shesiavia, that the father is the one that marries her off, but is garsha, and then she gets divorced in that way. Behi yisaima b'chayav. She's considered to be Yisayim in the father's lifetime, because the father can no longer marry her off again. The Achzira, and then she goes and remarries, that we only do Chalitza, we don't allow her to do Yibam in that case. Why? Because the divorce was an absolute acceptable gerushin. Because since the marriage was a strong marriage, the first marriage, so therefore the divorce was a valid divorce. She was completely severed. However, that she's a katana, so therefore it doesn't. It's not an entirely new marriage. Again, if the father married her off, then that's a kedusha deraisa. But if she marries the guy again, so that's not considered to be a full marriage, even though her relationship was severed. So, but her new kedushin is not so strong to allow her to do yibum. The medavar morim shegir shikashikatana, ve'echzir kashikatana. That's if she got remarried when she was a katana. Now, ve'gir shikashikatana ve'echzir kashikadayla. At that point, now it's a kedusha deraisa. O shechzir kashikatana ve'gadla etzla. She ends up even getting older by this man. Umeis ochletzes. In that situation, we will allow yibum because that's considered to be kedusha deraisa. As we continue to ayin dalad and aleph. No, even in that situation, I disagree. I say that she cannot do yibum. V'hahacha again is dikitois isha achastami upligi. So again, it's the same question. It's like one woman. So hasam nami b'hakamifchi. Marsav adam yodei shin kedushi katana klum. They know that the marriage when it's a katana is nothing. The gomer uboy l'shem kedusha, and therefore the bia was l'shem kedusha. Marsav in adam yodei shin kedushi katana klum. People don't know these laws. Therefore v'chika boil. Therefore when he had bia afterwards, when she was a gedol, atata kedusha rishonim kaboil, and therefore it's not considered to be a marriage. So it's all totally on whether or not the new bia was considered to be l'shem kedushin, or was on the das of the prior relationship. Question. We're going to stop there. TA 27. Gomandi armor bekadshal tenai v'kansastam betois isha achas ukliyamen tzricha get. Madua b'pachas m'shaber pruta tzricha get l'rabanan. Why would you need to give a get when it was pachas m'shaber pruta? So the reason why you need to give a get, according to the Rabbanan, is because Adam Yodeh Shein Kedushin B'Pachas M'Shever Pruta. A person knows that Kedushin, because you gave less than a Shever Pruta, was really nothing. TA 27. And therefore, because of that, V'Gamar Boy L'Shem Kedushin. Therefore, when you had Bia, it was done L'Shem Kedushin. TB 29. Hosif olehen zia v'shuma adkan.